Okay. All right, we're ready to go. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021, and this is a special meeting of the Montclair Zoning Board of Adjustment. Notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice in the Montclair Times and the Star Ledger, and a copy also at the municipal building. We'll do roll call. Mr. Harrison?
Present.
Mr. Fleischer?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Present.
Mr. Church? Mr. Church?
Here.
Okay. Mr. McCullough is excused. Mr. Allen is excused. Mr. Simon?
Here.
Mr. Simon. Ms. Harris is excused. Ms. Gilmer? Ms. Harris is excused.
Here.
And Mr. Caulfield?
Here.
And Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
And Mr. Sullivan?
Okay, we have the minutes of the January 20th meeting. I have a few changes on page 2, line 4. You have Mr. Vitteri's name is incorrect. And on line 12, at the end of the first sentence, add or make comments on the application. And then at the end of the second sentence, put there were no add or comment on the application. And then on page 3, line 3, same change to the first sentence, and add a third sentence on that line saying one member of the public spoke in favor of the application. And that's all the changes I have. Does anyone else have changes to those minutes?
Approval of the minutes with the changes as corrected by the chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention, Mr. Caulfield.
Okay, then we have the resolution for the extension for DH Development LLC. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
Move approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, Mr. Caulfield?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have the resolution for the Dolgan application on New Street. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes? Someone want to
Move approval of the application as submitted, of the resolution as submitted, sorry.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And abstention, Mr. Caulfield. We have the Weaver application on Grove Street on page 1, number 1 at the bottom of the page. You're just missing is the subject property is a corner lot, corner property. Any other changes to that resolution?
Move approval of the resolution as corrected. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And Mr. Caulfield is abstaining.
Yes.
We have the Greene application on Orange Road on page 2, number 5, the first sentence should be deleted. Unless I'm missing something. I know the required isn't 69 feet, and you have that in the sentence above. Any other changes to that resolution?
Move approval of the resolution as corrected by the chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Mr. Caulfield, you're abstaining.
Yes.
And then we have the resolution for Congregation Shomrei Emunah. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
Move approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And Mr. Caulfield, you're abstaining.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have the Haynes resolution for property on Lane Court. Just in number 1, cul-de-sac is missing one of its hyphens. I don't have any other changes. You want to move the resolution as corrected?
Move approval of the resolution as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And Mr. Caulfield, you're abstaining.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Graham, you want to announce the postponements?
So first up, first the application 2695 for property at 54 South Mountain Avenue, applicant Kyle and Carey Kolaja. The applicant has requested to adjourn this matter to the April 21st, 2021 meeting of the board. They will not be doing new notice, so the announcement this evening is carrying that matter to the April 21st meeting with no further notice. The applicant provided a letter to this effect dated today.
Do we need an extension of time from them?
We do need an extension of time from them. I'll be sure to obtain one from Mr. Trimbilak on this behalf. Although I should look at the letter, I think he may have consented to the extension of time in the request letter to adjourn.
Just make
I'll
sure
confirm that.
it's done.
Then the other matter that's postponed this evening is application 2700 for property at 4 Waterbury Road, applicant Anthony Montalto. The applicant will be carried to the February 17th meeting of the board. The applicant needs to correct the notices that were mailed to the adjoining property owners within 200 feet. They'll be completing that new notice to the neighbors, but we'll be carrying that this evening. There'll be no further notice in the newspaper, but we're announcing the carriage of that to the February 17th meeting of the board.
Okay. The first application is that of Andrew Thomas for property 60 Montague Place. This is an application for a variance to construct an addition to the existing dwelling on the property. The property is in the R2 two-family zone, and the two-family residential use is a permitted use in the zone. The property is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 6 and Block 2214. Bulk variances are requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B1 to permit a front yard setback for principal buildings of less than required 25 feet, Montclair Code Section 47-45B1 to permit a side yard setback for principal buildings of less than the required 6 feet, for Montclair Code Section 347-45E to permit a maximum building coverage greater than the 25%. From Montclair Code Section 347-102C to permit a minimum driveway width of less than 10 feet. And from Montclair Code Section 347-102 to permit a driveway closer than 1 foot to any property line and to permit parking spaces closer than 4 feet to a property line. Are taxes paid and is the notice in order?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, here for this application.
Mr. Chairman, are you waiting on me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready to proceed if you would like.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, council's name is Robert Cassione. The firm is Cassione Flamaco, 524 Union Avenue in Belleville. I represent the applicant, Andrew Todd Thomas, the owner of 60 Montague Place. My client is seeking to convert a single family that is located in a two-family zone into a two-family structure. He is seeking to have the first floor have one bedroom and one bath. The upper level will be expanded to have a third floor with a total of 2 bedrooms and a home office on the second and third floor. The two-family, as you know, is a permitted use, but in order to convert to a two, there are a number of bulk variances that are being requested. Also, there is a shared driveway. The witnesses you'll hear from are the applicant, Andrew Todd Thomas, the architect, Haimes, and the planner, Edward Snakis. I'd like to call Mr. Andrew Todd Thomas as my first witness, and I hope he's on.
Mr. Thomas, are you present?
Yes, I just brought Mr. Thomas into the meeting. Mr. Thomas, you can go ahead. You should be unmuted now.
Mr. Thomas,
Okay, I'm present.
Mr. Thomas, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending?
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending to the board?
It's all breaking up.
Can't help that.
He's just asking you to affirm that you're about to tell the truth. That's all.
Yes, I am.
Chairman, can I proceed with the questions?
You may.
Your business, your home address, Mr. Thomas.
60 Montague Place, Montclair, New
And for
Jersey.
how long are you living at that address?
16 years.
And would you tell the board just very generally, what is it you are seeking to do with your home?
I'd like to turn it into a two-family home.
And if this is approved, will you have just one bedroom and one bathroom on the first floor?
Yes,
And is that where you will reside?
yes,
And if this application is approved and you're able to make this a two-family, will you continue to reside on that first floor?
yes, I will.
And can you just point out to the board what parking, there is a screen up that shows the parking spaces. Can you just say the location of the space you will use for your car?
One closest to the home.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions of this witness.
In the do any board members have questions for this witness? Rather than going through everyone individually? Okay, Mr. Cassione.
I'm asking, it's a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Fleischer.
Does it meet all the requirements for that third floor being a half story? That's my question. Or is it it's not a full third floor, right? Because that's the way it keeps being referenced. I want to make sure that it's not technically a third floor.
Well, it's got a dormer on it, and I would have to ask my planner, and he has not been sworn in yet to make sure, or the architect. My apologies. Either one. When they get on, I will ask that question, Mr. Fleischer.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, are there any members of the public who have questions for this witness? Great.
None.
Going through and I'm unmuting all members of the public.
Okay. Do any members of the public have questions for this witness? Say so now.
Hey, all members of the public are currently unmuted. If you have a question, just speak up. Not hearing any at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question. Board members. Am I reading this correctly? So for the first unit, it's a one bedroom, and the proposed second unit, there will be 2 bedrooms there, one on the second floor and another on the attic. In the attic.
I believe the bedrooms on the second floor is exclusively on the second floor. rather than the third.
Mr. Moore, my architect is the next witness and probably can give you more details with regard to that, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, because what I'm reading, it just says proposed floor plan, and above that, it says, on the far back side, it says proposed bedroom and proposed closets on each side, so just looking for some clarity, but, you know. Okay.
Well, the architect, I hope, will be able to clarify that for you. I don't want to testify.
Okay.
Mr. Gassione, you want to call your architect?
Please, Haimes Cedra is the architect.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I'm here.
Mr. Cedra, you're now unmuted and you're in the meeting.
Would you swear to tell the matter pending before the board? Yes, I do. State your name and address, please.
Haimes, state your name and address.
My name is Ayman Sadra. Address is 115 North Spring Street, Bloomfield, New Jersey.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Cedra,
do any of these people have video on? Because I'm not seeing any video of this witness or the prior witness.
Haimes, can you put your video on?
I couldn't do that. For some reason, I don't have a video accessibility here. I'm not sure if that's something in my computer or something has to be corrected from the.
Check at the bottom of the screen next to the mute and unmute button and see if there's a video.
Yes, it says start video. Okay, hold on.
Right at the bottom, right next to the mute.
Take the camera, make sure that the camera device.
Just hit the start video, I believe. And believe me, I'm no expert.
You do need a camera though to do that.
Yeah, yes. He would need a camera to do so. If he doesn't have a camera, then it's obviously not going to work.
I think he just muted himself accidentally too. Ivan, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't make the camera to work for some
Okay.
reason. Maybe I.
Mr. Chairman, can I proceed without his photograph?
Yes.
Thank you. Ivan, would you tell us what your occupation is?
I am a licensed architect.
And where did you obtain your degree?
I obtained my degree from Egypt, from Elminia University Faculty of Engineering, and it was the architecture department.
And where do you maintain your practice and how long have you been practicing?
From AS Architectural Design, 188 Eagle Rock Avenue, Suite 5, Roseland. And I've been practicing for 14 years without a professional license and 5 years with a professional license.
And are you now a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am since 2016.
Have you testified previously before zoning boards and planning boards?
Yes, I have, and to name a few towns, Belleville.
That's not necessary. Were you
Okay.
accepted as an expert on each and every occasion?
Yes,
Were you engaged, Mr. Chairman?
We will accept him as an expert architect.
Thank you. Were you engaged to prepare the architectural plans for the proposed expansion to a new family?
yes, I prepared architectural plans.
And what is the zoning at the site?
R2, two family.
Would you describe the existing site?
Sure, the existing site consists of the two-story single-family frame dwelling with covered porch at the front and wood deck at the rear. Also, the site is equipped with one parking spot located at the rear of the property. The parking spot is accessible through a shared driveway between the subject property and 59 Montague Place.
Would you describe the existing building?
The existing building consists of 2 floors and unfinished basement. The first floor consists of the living spaces to include the living room, dining room, and kitchen. The second floor consists of the sleeping spaces to include 3 bedrooms with closets and 2 bathrooms. The basement level consists of unfinished space with an open area for utility and laundry.
Mr. Sedra, I'm just going to go back to your previous answer. When you talked about the shared driveway, you mentioned 59 Montague. I believe you mean 58
58,
Montague.
I'm sorry, yes, it's 58.
That's okay. Are you proposing any additions or alterations to the existing building?
Yes, we're proposing an attic addition.
And would you describe the proposed building design should this application be approved?
Sure. We're proposing to convert this single-family house to 2-family by allocating the first and unfinished basement to the first apartment and allocating the second floor and proposed attic addition to the second apartment.
Describe the first floor apartment, please.
Sure. The first floor apartment consists of the living room, kitchen, eating area, 1 bedroom with closet, and 1 bathroom. They're all located at the first floor, and we have the utilities and laundry area located at the basement level. And we have a total of 1 bedroom for this apartment.
And describe the second floor apartment, and please concentrate on where those bedrooms are located. I believe it was Mr. Moore that asked about that.
Sure. The second apartment consists of the living room, kitchen, eating area, 1 bedroom with walk-in closet, 2 bathroom. They're all located at the second floor. So only 1 bedroom located at the second floor. And then the attic consists of the second bedroom, sitting area and home office and a powder room. So we have a total of 2 bedrooms between the second floor and the attic.
Now, Mr. Fleischer asked about that third floor, and his question, do you hear the question?
Yes, there is no third floor. It's just a livable attic. It's half a story, not a full story. Yeah, it's just a half a story. It's a livable attic.
A dormer. You got a dormer on there, correct?
With the 2 dormers in each side.
Yeah, thank you.
And would you describe the proposed exterior of the new building should this be approved?
Sure. It's a colonial style home with the face brick on the exterior. We are proposing to construct an attic addition with 2 dormers in each side of the building. The proposed building height will increase to 32 feet, but stay in conformance with the zoning ordinance. Also, we are proposing to upgrade the exterior of the building. The exterior design of this building, including the accurate proportion of the building components, gives the building its unique presence in the neighborhood, and it improves the static appearance as well.
You talked about the height of the building increasing. You're only talking about a 2 or 3 foot increase in the height. Is that correct?
Exactly. The original height was 29 feet, and we increased it to 32. So it's
you broke up when you said that. Did you say the original height was 29 feet?
Correct. The original height was 29 feet, and we increasing the roof to 32 feet.
Thank you. Would you describe the proposed parking?
We are proposing 3 parking spots at the rear of the property, and all cars have to back out through the shared driveway just for access, for egress and ingress. We prepared the parking layout to demonstrate this procedure, which I can review, but I'm not sure if I can.
Well, you could just explain how they would back out, that's all.
We just submitted this earlier. I'm not sure if you guys received it or not. It's a site layout that shows the 3 parking spots and how they will be getting out of the spot all the way to the driveway. Maybe I can try my camera again. I like to share this page with you guys.
Is this a new exhibit we're talking about?
Yes, it's the newer exhibit that was submitted today, if you have it.
My associate, Michael Piramali, may have sent it in today. We only got it at my office sometime today.
Are we able to screen share that, Graham?
Yes, I'll pull that up now. Just give me 1 second.
Thank you, Graham. Sorry about the late submission.
No worries.
I apologize for the camera thing. I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe I can try to go through another
Here
computer.
it is.
It's up now, Hyman.
Yeah, this is the layout of the three cars. On the right side, this is the three car that belongs to the 60 Montague Place. And on the left side, I'm showing also the next door neighbor cars, which they're two cars. They're parked on a 45-degree parking, and the same for 60 Montague Place. It's a 45-degree parking. The dash line indicates the turning radius of every car to to turn from its location to access the driveway. The next page, if you can maybe get us to the next page.
Could we kind of keep some order to this? That's a new exhibit that was just presented. Can we mark that as A1 just so we can keep track of things?
Sure.
What are you going to call A1? What are you identifying it as?
Maybe you call it site layout.
Why don't we call it parking exhibit? Why don't we call it parking?
Parking layout.
Thank you.
And is the one space closest to the building designated to be used by the owner who occupies the first floor, should this be approved?
Yes.
I have no further questions to this witness, Mr. Chairman.
Are there questions? Are there questions from members of the board? Mr. Fleischer, do you have any questions?
I do. I mean, in general, we don't like a situation where everybody has to back out of a space across a sidewalk zone because of the basic danger that exists from doing that. And in this case, we have a lot where we're virtually, I guess that third car can get out between the other two, but I think this is overloaded with 5 parking spaces, and I'm concerned about a parking lot that requires 5 vehicles because of the uses and everything else, coupled with the fact that it's a very narrow driveway and that everybody has to drive down it backwards to get out or has to go in backward to get in, one or the other. I think it's frankly a dangerous condition. And if this is the result of the required parking, partially as a result of the increase in the number of people at 60 Montague, I'm actually very concerned about it. This looks like a dangerous situation to me, both for the structure.
Mr. Fleischer, that this is the worst case scenario, obviously, that my architect put together. This would be should there be 3 cars at our location, and should there be 2 cars at the other location. You don't necessarily expect there's going to be, in today's world, the way people take public transportation and the way Montclair is with people taking the train, we don't expect there'll be 3 cars. It could be. And we certainly don't know that there will be 2 cars next door. This is a hypothetical that my architect put together. He did not do any investigation to determine that there would be 2 cars next door.
I understand, but part of the reason this occurs is to avoid a parking variance and meet the requirements of the code. And part of the reason for that is the resultant effort to make this one-family building into a 2-family building. So it's building on each other. I'm simply saying that since that is the required parking for these residences, I think we've created a very dangerous situation, and I'm concerned about it. And I'd rather not allow that many vehicles in the back, and then it becomes up to the applicant or others to find another place or another means of parking a vehicle, off-site or renting a space elsewhere or something, because this looks like an accident ready to happen. Not only the fact that the driveway itself is only 9 foot wide, buildings tied up against it on both sides. you're forcing people to back down a very substantial length within that narrow neck of the thing, assuming they manage to get out from the mix of the 5 spaces. It looks dangerous to me, and it scares me, and the increasing density.
Well, my client certainly, if there was an approval of the application, would understand that there's a condition that there are only 2 cars parked in the back, if the board feels more comfortable with that. This obviously, as you said already, and I'm repeating, was just an effort to try to comply. The need isn't necessarily there in today's world. Many of the new zoning ordinances are providing 1 space per unit as opposed to 1 space, 2 spaces per unit, or that situation.
I'd like the witness to answer the questions, basically. The other issue I'm saying is that I'm concerned that in this configuration does not work at all. And I'm wondering if there's an agreement and a shared driveway and everything else, whether we can't limit the total number of cars back there to maybe 3. And that would then allow them to park perpendicular to the property line, back up and pull out forward. And then you have something that's at least a marginally safe condition. This is a dangerous condition. And I'm simply expressing that I have some real concerns, and I'd like to get some answers. And answers have to come not only from this applicant, but also from that same neighbor, because I don't think the applicant can speak for the neighbor other than to say they have a shared driveway. I just think we're packing too many vehicles onto this site, and that's in part a result of the increase in numbers of people living on the site, or the proposed increase in the number of people living on the site. So I'm expressing a concern. I certainly would like to hear from my fellow board members. But for me, what I'm seeing is certainly not making me comfortable. And angled parking, forcing people to back out, it's definitely an accident or damage to the building or something waiting to happen, either to the cars or the building. I mean, think about it with the mirrors out and everything else, and you're backing out. I think it's a bit of a nightmare, which means it's, in a sense, too dense for such a narrow shared driveway. So I'm concerned about it, at least. That's the only question I have. I think the issue of the attic is satisfactory to me, and it does meet the criteria for the attic. I think the dormers are set up fine. I leave it to the architect to make sure he has all the headrooms he needs for the stairways. But assuming the architect has done that, I'm satisfied that it meets that criteria. I'm just concerned about this whole site plan condition. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
Sure, yes. I agree with my colleague, Joseph Fleischer. I'm also concerned about the parking. It looks like it's just a little bit too dense back there, squeezing between not only the potential new tenants' cars, but the neighboring cars. And, you know, the illustration even just, it depicts it right in front of you. I think it becomes increasingly harder if the third car is coming home late at night and they have to pull in between both cars. I mean, you know, the first 2 cars, they look good, but the last one is a little iffy. I don't know if, you know, maybe the architects may want to do some other drawings, sketches, renderings that illustrate it in another way that looks more conducive, or possibly just taking that one out altogether. That's my concern. So far, I think that the other ideas in terms of building another, a second unit on there are fine at this point in time. But I am concerned about the 3 cars. I don't know if you want to shorten the deck that you have so that you can bring the parking up. I'm not sure, but these are just something to think about. But the third car is concerning. So I would probably make that a stipulation.
Mr. Chairman, if you want me to recall my client, I can, and ask him the relevant questions with regard to an agreement to reduce the 2 parking spaces if you think that would.
Well, let's go through the entire board first and then discuss at that point, or if you want to recall them at that point. But Mr. Simon, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, just a couple for my clarification. The roof is currently 29, and you said it's going up to 32. Are you redoing the entire roof? Because I thought my initial impression was that you were just adding dormers, but you'll be taking out the complete roof and rebuilding to the higher height?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Second question was, you mentioned the basement was finished. Is it currently finished now?
No, the basement is unfinished. It's just one big open space, and it hosts the laundry and the mechanical equipments.
Now, as part of finishing that basement, are you adding a room or bedroom?
We're not doing any work in the basement. The basement is staying as existing. We're not adding any rooms or touching the basement.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
Mr. Caulfield, do you have any questions?
I like the project, but the parking it's a nightmare, to be honest with you. So I do like the project, but the parking is not my favorite.
Okay. Ms. Gilmer, do you have any questions?
I also like the addition. I'm fine with that, but I echo the same sentiments in regards to parking.
Okay. I have a couple questions on parking. Is the parking that you're showing, is that doing any changes to the existing parking on the neighbor's property?
I'm sorry, say the question again.
The existing pavement on the neighbor's parking where you show the 2 cars parked, is that changing from what is currently exists?
No, that's the current look of the existing pavement on the neighbors. I surveyed it myself and I measured it. That's how it looks.
Okay, so, and have you looked at what would a configuration with limiting the parking on this side to 2 cars? At that point, can you just simply do head-on parking, and would there be enough room for a vehicle to turn around so it can go head out front first?
The space is a little bit tight back there, but
what is the distance between the deck and the edge, the rear edge of the parking lot?
I have 52 feet, about 52.41 feet. There is a dimension on the drawing from the edge of the deck to the end of the parking.
So, I mean, you would have, a normal sized parking space would be 10 by 18. So you would have
9 by 18.
Yeah, but I'm saying you would have room for a 10 by 18 even, and it would seem to me enough room for a car to back out and turn around without a lot of difficulty. Is that correct?
To make it like 90-degree parking?
Yeah, just pull straight in. You would have room for 2 spaces.
I'm not sure if that will work though. Yeah, you will have space for 2 space for two cars, but the problem with the with the 90-degree parking, it needs more room in front of the parking space to get in and out. The 11 feet that we have, the 11.92 is not gonna make it when you go 90 degree. I mean, you need more than that to maneuver around and turn yourself.
But Ivan, don't you have a situation where you've got a driveway easement and you could cross over onto the other parcel?
Yes, you have the driveway easement.
So wouldn't you be able to make the turn in light of that situation?
I have to try it on the computer to see if it's gonna work.
In addition, is there a possibility you could park two cars along the property line? Because you got 52 feet and you only need a lot less than that to park two cars along that property line.
Yeah, but we have a limitation in relationship to where to start the parking from the parking lot. We are applying for variance, and we're very close from the property line. Again, I have to do it in. I have to do a layout and see if it will allow me for enough maneuvering to get the cars out.
Are you able to do that on the spot, or you need time to do that?
No, we need time to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, I've got an issue here that has to be squared away. If I were to talk to my client and agree to adjourn to try to get a new diagram for you, could I be back first on the list or on the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get us the information, so we have it 10 days in advance, we're meeting again in 2 weeks. I mean, get us the information by Friday.
Hyman, can you get that done?
Yes, by Friday, yes.
Okay, and
then, you're always at a disadvantage when you have this kind of a meeting, and I don't have my client to talk to, but if he can hear me,
Yes.
can you consent to the adjournment to the meeting, which is a little more than 2 weeks hence?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, then I would ask that we be permitted to be adjourned so the architect can submit a plan trying to propose a way to come out, making a 3-point turn and coming out forward as opposed to backing out.
okay, before we do that, let me just see, in case there are any members of the public who might have input on this issue, and so you have that and not get surprised in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any members of the public who either have any questions or anything they want to say about the parking situation or any of the other testimony by the architect?
I'm going to unmute all the lines of public participants. So you're unmuted at this time. If you have any comments, now is the time to speak.
Okay.
Not hearing any comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, I have one further question before I adjourn. I think I'd rather leave my planner for the next meeting, but if you want him to testify now, I can have him testify, but I'd rather wait till he sees what happens with the parking.
It makes sense, since one of the variances is for the parking, and let's see what he's proposing, and
thank you.
And can testify on that. Okay, so this matter is being continued to our meeting on February 17th. There will be no further notice given, and it won't be necessary to repeat his testimony concerning the building, but we are going to want additional testimony on the parking, and we'll proceed from there.
And Mr. Chairman, I hate to be nervy, but can we be first on the list to finish this up?
Maybe is my. I don't know what else is what other fun events tonight.
Okay.
But I mean, normally yes, and I don't know if we have anything exciting else on the 17th, but more likely than not, you'll be early on the agenda.
Thank you.
Can I add something, Bill, before we wrap this up? I think we need some agreement with the neighbor as well as to the combined parking configuration for what I'll call this shared driveway and how the two sites work together, because that's the only way this parking lot works, is if they both sides of the shared driveway agree to a layout. So I think that has to somehow come into the testimony.
Mr. Fleischer, I do
There's
remember.
already a shared parking agreement in place, and you've got a copy of that. There's a shared driveway agreement. It allows the one property owner to travel over the driveway area of the adjacent owner and vice versa. So that's already in place. I mean, we're not talking about a situation where they're actually parking on the adjacent property. We're talking about one where they simply needed to access the common driveway.
No, the answer is I understand that the shared driveway agreement exists. That's not the problem. But in order to make this work with the kind of things they're talking about and perpendicular parking, in the parking area, they may have to maneuver on both sides of the property as well. I just want to make sure it works for both parties. And if the other neighbor isn't there and he doesn't care, that's fine. I'm suggesting that someone ought to make sure that they've spoken to each other before we see another plan. That's up to the applicant, I guess.
I will discuss that with my client and take your comments into consideration, subject to obviously a driveway easement that exists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, the easement does provide that each party agrees not to park vehicles in a manner which would restrict free egress and egress to the rear of the subject premises. So I think that's, whatever plan you come up with to clearly show that. I mean, one of my concerns with this layout is, the turn that requires to go on the neighboring property, but also in very close proximity to the car. And if we can avoid that, I think that's more in keeping with the intent of the easement.
Mr. Chairman, the exact language, I believe, is each party agrees not to park vehicles in a manner which would restrict the free ingress and egress to the rear of the subject premises.
Correct. But, okay.
But still, I understand. We will try to.
I was reading. I just make sure, okay. Okay. So this matter is being continued until our meeting on February 17th. There will be no further notice. And Mr. Gassion and Mr. Thomas, we will see you then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I am recused on the next matter. So I'm going to temporarily disappear and I'll be paying attention, but Graham, you maybe text me in the event I'm not here when you're ready to return.
Will do.
It's for property located 157, 159 Forest Street and 59 Chestnut Street, two lots that are being combined under the terms of the application. The subject application was granted variance relief by the Board of Adjustment on December 16th, 2020, and memorialized in the resolution on January 20th, 2021. As part of the resolution of approval, the board required the applicant to return for site plan approval, which is the reason for tonight's hearing. So with that, I turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. Yeah, we're returning for site plan approval.
Mr. Costello, let me just stop you so I can swear you in. Will you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Kevin Costello, 157 Forest Street, Montclair.
Okay, you can proceed.
Yeah, so I've got Rick Jarzembowski from Sinus Architecture today. If you remember, previously came in with a site plan. We had some issues with the full board didn't get the site plan at the time. So Paul or Rick has a presentation to kind of show the changes that have been made. We also have Paul Anderson is available if need be, if there's kind of any technical questions about the grading, drainage, that kind of thing, because he also has some plans submitted. So from there, I'll have Rick take over.
Mr. Jarembowski, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter presented before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Rick Jarzembowski, 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay, you want to go through your presentation? I see there's a PowerPoint up there. Let's mark that as collectively Exhibit A1. And just as you do go through that, Mr. Jarzembowski, if you would just refer to the pages also, please, too.
Okay. Graham, could you go to page 4, I believe? Okay. So just quickly to overview the project, the site is on the southeast corner of Forest and Chestnut Streets. There's an existing 4-family dwelling fronting on Forest Street and an existing 2-family dwelling fronting on Chestnut Street. To the east of the site is the railroad right-of-way, and to the south is a 1-story commercial building. The proposal is to add a 2-family dwelling between the existing dwellings. The proposed 2-family dwelling will be set back 25 feet from Chestnut Street, 16.9 feet from the side of the existing 2-family dwelling, 54.24 feet from the rear of the existing 4-family dwelling, and 29.76 feet from the south lot line. The existing driveway, which comes off Forest Street, will be widened to 18 feet to allow for 2-way ingress and egress. Along the drive will be 5 8-foot by 22-foot parallel parking spaces. At the southeast corner of the site, a parking area of 11 9-foot by 18-foot parking spaces is proposed. One of those spaces will be a barrier-free space with an 8-foot barrier-free access aisle.
Hey, Mr. Jarzembowski, can I just
Yes.
stop you for a second?
Sure.
Are you possible to go on video?
I've tried, but it won't start.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, now I think it started.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay. Yep, that's me. Okay. The proposed drive and parking area will be bounded by granite block curbing. The drive and parking area will be illuminated by 3 light fixtures mounted on the north wall of the adjacent building, which is on the adjacent property to the south. The proposed light levels meet the 0.5 foot candle minimum requirement. At one point in the center of the rear parking area, they do exceed the 2-foot candle maximum requirement. But this area is not visible to any adjacent residential properties. Pedestrian access for the 4-family dwelling is from Forest Street via a sidewalk up to the steps to the front of the building. And then pedestrian access to the proposed 2-family and the existing 2-family are from Chestnut Street. There's quite a grade difference there. So there's a staircase, an exterior staircase up from the sidewalk at Chestnut Street. And then there's an existing walk along the side of the existing 2-family, which when it gets near the rear of the 2-family at the driveway and parking area, will be joined by a new concrete sidewalk, which will connect all 3 dwellings to the parking areas. That walk is illuminated by some existing light fixtures on the existing 2-family and 3 new light fixtures on the east wall of the proposed new 2-family dwelling. The existing rear porch of the 4-family dwelling is to be removed and replaced with a larger and more usable porch. The porch right now has very low headroom on the 2nd level, and the stair configuration is not very usable. Each of the new dwelling units in the 2-family dwelling unit will have a small patio on the south side, and they will have a fenced yard on the north side along Chestnut Street. Also, between the 4-family and the 2-family, there's a fence from the northwest corner of the proposed 2-family, which jogs to the west a little bit and then out to Chestnut Street, where there's an existing retaining wall with a 3-foot-high metal fence on top of it. Also, there will be a fence along the sidewalk that is along the 5 parallel parking spaces. And, that will separate the sidewalk and parking area from the yards. And then the existing 2-family on the east side of the property will have a new fenced area from the southeast corner of the dwelling back to the parking area. That's a pretty heavily wooded area there. Okay. The existing 2-family dwelling and the new 2-family dwelling, each dwelling unit will have a small enclosed trash enclosure, each individual one. And there is an existing trash area for the 4-family dwelling on the south side of the dwelling next to the driveway. The majority of the existing trees, there are many mature trees on the site, will remain. And then 2 small trees are proposed. I'm sorry, Graham, could you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
Next one. Thank you. So this shows that, there's lots of existing large trees, especially next to the railroad right away. It's a very wooded area. And as I was saying, there's 2 small trees proposed in front of the new 2-family dwelling along Chestnut Street. There's a large tree proposed behind the existing 2-family dwelling at the parking area. And then there's shrubs proposed behind the new 2-family dwelling and on the west and south sides of the rear parking area. And all those plantings were picked by Paul Sionis to be, they're all New Jersey native plantings. They were picked to have seasonal interest, and the ones along the parking areas were picked to be salt tolerant because of the potential for salting near the pavement. And that's the general description of the project.
Questions from members of the board?
Mr. Jarzembowski, this is Michael Sullivan, the board attorney. This is a bifurcated application. As part of the use variance application wherein the board adopted a resolution on January 20, 2021, there were various D variances granted and some setback variances granted. As part of this site plan application, there is no further relief requested. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I assume Mr. Anderson is going to go through the Suburban Consulting Engineers report of January 26, 2021.
Well, he will go through the civil engineering aspects of it.
Well, at some point, the board is going to want to know whether or not you're going to agree to the various comments or if you have an issue with the comments. So I don't know where that's going to come from, as long as it comes from somebody, or there's a statement to the effect that all of those items will be complied with.
Well, okay. Some of those items are, questions of easement, and
I guess what we're looking for is testimony that all those items will be satisfied, or they'll all be satisfied except we have an issue with A, B, and C, and we'll want to know what that is.
Okay.
I think we could pretty easily go through them. I don't think we have
And
a problem with.
the idea is hopefully to not go through all the items. We really want to know whether there's 26 items. Does the applicant have an issue with any of the 26 items? That's what we should be discussing, as opposed to, I think, losing everybody going through all 26.
Okay. So on item number 17, the lighting, as I stated, we do exceed the 2-foot candle in one area, but we don't feel that's a detriment to any adjacent property owners.
Okay, so let's stop right there. So Graham, is that an exception or a variance?
That would be a waiver from 281 as the site plan section. So that's
Okay,
a waiver.
so it's a waiver or an exception, depending on the nomenclature. So when I asked whether there was any relief requested, Mr. Jarzembowski, this is one of the items that I guess you're requesting relief from?
Well, this hasn't changed from any of the previous applications.
Well, but we didn't grant relief as part of the use variance application. So that's why I'm trying to make sure you walk away here, if you think you have an approval, that we're granting what you think you need, what we think you need.
Okay.
And just as a follow-up on that, why don't you pinpoint precisely on the plans where this overage exists? I mean, we already know that you're putting it on a building that is not part of this property, and we presume you have approval from the owner of that building. That's a given, but it would still be useful to know where that exceeding of 2-foot candles exists and why you think it is specifically not a problem, so that we can all make the same judgment. And that, I think that's really the issue. That's part of the issue on this item.
Right. Where Graham circled, that's approximately the area.
And can you explain why it occurs there, or where the light source is that is
right? That's the light. Right, that's the light source, which is keyed as B, and to be able to get the throw to the entire parking area from that existing, or from that location on the existing building, the area directly underneath that light source and a little bit to the north does exceed the 2-foot candles. But we felt that because that area is bounded on 2 sides by the adjacent commercial building, and on the other side is the railroad, that it wouldn't really be a detriment to any other property owners.
And do the property owners see the source of the light?
No,
the property owners in this development, do they see the source of the lighting?
No, it's an LED night sky, compatible light source. So it's not like a floodlight where you're looking at the lens and looking at the bulb. It's facing down.
And it seems to extend to a much larger area than what Graham just circled. He circled the ones where it's over 3-foot candles.
Oh, okay. I can't see the numbers on my screen.
Well, it's a pretty substantial area in the entire side of the parking lot.
The maximum in the site plan section of the ordinance is 2.
I'd say half the depth of the parking lot, more than half the depth of the parking lot is over the 2. And part of the problem may be that the source is from so distant from the areas where the parking is taking place. Because it's certainly quite heavy in the area where the cars are going to be.
Can I ask, Rick, are you proposing on the existing 2-family to have a light that shines towards that parking lot on the deck or anything like that?
Yeah, there's just a residential type fixture there. The foot candle line is shown there. It's that dashed arc. Yes.
I'm just wondering if there's any way to do more of a commercial type light there to give you the foot candles you need in those two small parking spaces closest to the house, and then you could reduce the output from the fixture that's proposed on the commercial building to make that compliant. I don't know if we've tried that.
The other option is to have a fixture that's not attached to that building that's so far away, along the perimeter of the parking on both sides to reduce the heavy zone of overage. It's substantially over for a big chunk of area.
Okay, we can certainly kick around some options that could get us under that. I tend to think that bollard or pole lights near a parking lot like this just get hit by plows, but maybe there's something we can come up with. I like the building attached lights for that reason, but.
Right. We were trying to avoid a pole light there because, we're trying to keep this as residential as possible. But we could look into adding a light to the Chestnut Street dwelling.
Yeah, I feel like that might be the easiest option. If you can add one to the back of that, would pick up the light you need on that side, and then you could reduce the one on the commercial building. Okay, so we can comply with that. We'll reconfigure, and we'd like that to be a condition of approval if we get to that. There's two other items on there that I wanted to look at. Item number 8 says that the parking lot extends into the sewer right of way and that we should get an easement for that. I was looking at that site plan. It's just a little corner of that lot. I think it would make more sense to just, there's not an actual parking spot right there. It's just like kind of a backup zone. Almost seems like we could make that work without that encroaching on the right of way. If we clipped that corner right there, it's probably easier to do that than to, obtain the easement.
That would be a much better solution.
Rick, do you see any issues with that as far as a zone for a backup?
Right. I think we would need a waiver for the backup distance.
Okay.
How high a wall is that?
It's only a foot or a foot and a half. I think actually the part that goes into the sewer easement is just curb.
Curbing, I believe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Graham, would that require relief if they pinch that off as they're talking about?
As far as the backup area?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think that's not part of the site plan requirements.
So far, it sounds like two items that, you thought you may want to seek relief for and not comply with. It sounds like 8 and 17, you're going to comply with one way or another.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
No, I agree with you, Mr. Sutherland.
And then number 18 listed the 5 parallel spaces as compact spaces. It's always been our experience in the past that 8-foot by 22-foot spaces complied for parallel spaces, that the 9-foot wasn't required because you have no cars next to you. You don't need that 9-foot width. And 8-foot is standard for the parallel spaces on the street in Montclair. I don't think the ordinance specifically says what the width of a parallel space should be.
Well, I think the comment of suburban consulting engineers is they're not clear whether or not you're complying with that, with respect to the compact spaces?
Well, I know we comply with the length of a parallel space, but I don't believe the site plan ordinance says anything about the width of a parallel space. But
to confirm that.
right, I guess we would be seeking a waiver on that if they feel that the 9 foot is required.
I guess in the absence, I mean, this is a situation where the ordinance is deficient and does not define a space width for parallel space.
So did they need an exception, Graham, based upon what's proposed?
I guess, it sounds like Suburban's interpretation is, just that the only area where it talks about required space width is in 9B, but that's referring to, it is kind of ambiguous. It just says each parking space shall have. So I guess, just to protect the applicant and just kind of be, broad in this, I think that issuing a waiver would be probably the right move.
I don't think it's a problem. I just want to, if we need to issue the waiver, we should issue the waiver.
Right.
The alternative is the houses shift another foot to the north. The whole property shifts another foot to the north, basically the houses, the fence, the sidewalk, and then you can get the 9 foot. So either way, either solution works. I don't think we have a front yard variance issue here. So that's another option for the applicant if they just want to move everything north by a foot.
Well, our front yard now is 25 feet, so that would take us down to 24.
Right, which would then
That would be a variance then. Okay.
Yeah.
We've always, like Rick said, we've always assumed the 8 foot parallel spots are not compact spots. I think they're 8 foot everywhere in town. And municipal spots, I believe, are all 8 feet too. So I don't see it's a problem. If the board's okay with a waiver, I'd rather do that rather than shift the houses.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know if any other board member does. I mean, you don't even have to shift the house. It affects, frankly, it affects the patio areas and the fence there to basically move the sidewalk over another foot to the north. You only take a foot out of the patio area. If that.
What's our depth on that patio, Rick? Is that 6 I see there?
For 6, the 6th dimension looks like it's just the enclosure.
Oh, I got you. And I think it's 8.5.
8.5.
I'd rather, if it's all the same to the board, I'd rather have 8.5 there for a patio, which is kind of a nice patio.
Okay, your call.
And I just want to, for the sake of clarity, just to confirm with everyone, so it's 281-9C reads the following: the required minimum parking space dimensions may be waived and dimensions of 8 feet by 17 feet permitted where the approving authority finds that such spaces can be reasonably be reserved for use by small cars.
I think we're okay then.
Yeah.
So Graham, I'm not sure, based on that language, I don't know that it is an exception. It sounds like we can just grant that, right?
Just grant the approval.
Yeah. So I think we would just note that in the resolution that that I don't think they need relief. It sounds like we have the ability to just do it.
Yes. So I wanted to provide that. Yes.
Right. But the engineer is then stating that we should have a compact parking only sign at each one of those spaces. Which I think Kevin would be assigning those spaces. So I don't know if that's really necessary.
I mean, it's up to the board. I think that fits a full-size car. I think you'd find that a lot of parallel spots are only 8 feet wide. Like Rick said, you don't have a car next to you to worry too much about. But if they want the compact only signs, it's not like it's a big expense to us or anything. Yeah, it doesn't matter either way.
I think it's okay.
Smaller cars.
Okay.
And then the last one I see in the engineer's report is number 9, says there's slight differences between the architect's and the engineer's plans that should be addressed. So the retaining wall is something that was just a mistake. We didn't catch it. So from the last plan to this plan, we had actually reduced parking. Mr. Fleischer had said that there's probably not a need for as many parking spots as we had. We had some extras, so we reduced those. In doing so, we thought we could save one tree, which is why that parking area has that semicircle bump out there. I didn't realize that changed the grade difference was enough there that caused there to be a retaining wall, a small retaining wall along that edge of the parking lot. I didn't catch this until I saw the engineer's report today. I didn't even know there was a retaining wall there. But my concern is, I think if you put that parking lot on top of the root system of that tree, I think you're going to end up killing that tree no matter what. So I don't know if it's worth it to try to save that tree. It was a nice idea for us to do it, but it creates the need for a retaining wall that I really don't think is necessary there. I think the grading could work without it. And I think it's probably better to just take out that tree, not have a retaining wall there. And then that parking lot could just be squared off.
Which item is this on the report?
Item number 9, the engineer notes there's a very slight difference between the architect's plan and the engineer's plan. And that's the item he's talking about. There's a small retaining wall added.
But that's a substantial mature tree, which we'd like to figure out a way of saving.
It is, and which is why we kind of made the parking lot that shape. I wasn't thinking about the grades, looking at maybe Paul, Paul Anderson, when he gives his testimony, can discuss it. But just in our experience, whenever you put, 1.5 feet of dirt on top of the root system of that tree, especially compacted soils and everything that you're going to need as a base for this parking area, I would think that would kill the tree. So I don't know if we're doing all that to save a tree that's not going to end up being saved anyways. But Paul can discuss kind of how that grade might work without the retaining wall.
We'll hear from him later.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, we would, everything. I think we came to a conclusion that we will comply with number 8. We'll comply with number 17, 18. The parallel spots the board was okay with. And Paul Anderson can, discuss the slight differences with that number 9. Other than that, we would comply with everything in the engineer's report.
Where did we end up with 19?
What was 19?
We decided these were the parallel parking spots that we talked about. And we said we thought the 18 was probably okay, and
No, that's different. That's different. That's 18. I'm talking about 19.
Well, that's related, just saying that because they are compact, they should have signage saying that they are.
Right, and that's the question. Are you asking the board not to do the signs, or are you saying you're going to comply with the signs?
I would rather not do the signs, but if the board feels that they want them, we have no problem installing them.
Okay, I mean, they're saying markings or signage, so I mean that's what the engineer's recommendation is.
Understood. I just don't think an 8-foot parallel spot is difficult for a full-size vehicle to get in either. I think they work for either, so I don't think the markings are necessary, but I really don't feel strongly about it either way.
Yeah, actually, I'd hate to restrict it to. My own sense is I would not like to restrict it to only compact cars, and so I'd rather not have that. I'd rather grant a waiver to allow for an 8-foot wide parallel space, because it's kind of unclear, even in the code as to what's required for a parallel spot. The 9 foot is certainly important when you have cars on both sides of you, but I'm not sure it's important when you're parking parallel along a curb. So I think we'd have to just grant the waiver at that point rather than start limiting it to compact cars only.
So, Mr. Fleischer, you'd be inclined to grant the waivers or exceptions for items 18 and 19 in that report, correct?
I would, yes. But others may have a different opinion. I don't think they will, but they might.
Graham, from a planning standpoint, and you see any difficulties in granting those exemptions?
I don't think so. I think that the ordinance is a little bit, obviously, as we've discovered, has a deficiency in that it does not define a space width for a parallel parking space. And in furtherance to the compact language is really specific to a vehicle length. And a parallel space is defined as 22 feet. Compact vehicles can be as short as 16 feet. So, but a full-size vehicle can use a 22-foot length. So that's not what they're reducing. They're reducing the width, which isn't really clearly defined. So.
Graham, in a non-parallel space, what's the requirement width-wise for a compact?
For a compact, so the ordinance allows for compact space to be reduced down to 8 feet in width.
But again, I think they're more talking about what exists in a parking lot as opposed to in cars that are parking perpendicular and cars on either side of them. I don't think it was. I don't think it's structured to deal with a parallel vehicle park. And the 22 feet is more than sufficient for most vehicles around.
To be clear on what the requirement is in a parking lot. So 8 feet is the requirement in a parking lot for a compact space.
Right.
Are there
Mr.
any
Costello,
other?
I don't know, is there any more board comments, but.
I have a couple of others that I haven't even gone through. I'd like to hear from the other members of the board, but.
Yeah, I had an additional question about the lighting. What's the lighting along the sidewalk going from the front to the back? Catch that. And all that lighting is being provided by the building?
Right, there's 2 fixtures on the adjacent building, which are lighting that parking area and the sidewalk.
So there's nothing on the actual property to light the sidewalk?
No. There are small residential fixtures, on the building, the new 2-family dwelling. So they light up the entrance steps to that dwelling.
So, what would happen if, for whatever reason, the building owner changed or they decided not to provide that lighting? I don't. I'm just curious. Will that have any effect? I mean, it'd be too late to the actual project, but what happens if that agreement changes?
So we agreed to comply with item number 17 on the engineer's report that proposed that we have a construction and maintenance easement with the neighboring property to maintain that lighting. So that easement would go with the property. Regardless of ownership, we would have a right to have those on there.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Any other members of the board?
Kevin?
Yes.
It's John Caulfield. A comment. Utilities are going to be through Chestnut Street to the new developments?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's going underneath that wall, is that correct?
It goes through the wall. Yeah, so I met out there with some people from the township to kind of discuss how that would work. So I wanted to come, the wall gets a lot smaller the wall is quite tall, like at those stairs. It's, I don't know, Rick, it's 9 or 10 feet maybe. But it gets smaller and smaller as it gets to Chestnut till it's only like 6 inches tall. So I really, that's why the utilities kind of run all the way up there and then cut through. It's just when I worked with my mason, he said that was going to be the easiest spot for him to get through that retaining wall. So I reviewed that with the utility department about how I would at least do the water and sewer, because that's kind of the one that I don't think PSE&G cares how that runs. But I checked with the township and they said that would be that would work for them.
Okay. One last question, Kevin. In the back along the railroad tracks, is there a thought of putting a fence in there at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to.
I would hate to have like somebody walk across the property, go through the parking lot, get into the railroad tracks. You know what I mean? like in that sense. I don't know if that. Have you thought about maybe putting a fence along that area? I mean,
I think it's a good idea.
But
right now it's pretty wooded, but I do intend that existing 2-family, that's their kind of private yard space over there. So I don't think that's a bad idea to put a fence there somewhere.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Sure.
Any other members of the board? I have a bunch of questions on sidewalks and walkways and fences. Can we go back either to the rendered site plan or to something that can show at a larger scale the whole issue of the fencing and everything else?
I'm realizing you made a comment about this fencing at the last meeting, Joe, and it didn't make it onto this plan. I think I
was trying to get rid of a lot of these fences that are all over the place here. I mean,
I agree with you. I think I know what one you're talking about, but I'll let you get to it.
But no, we had the rendered plan from the colored rendered plan. I guess it's that one. Can we just sort of zoom in on that? Especially around the whole entry coming up off of Chestnut Street, because that entry bothers me as the primary entry for 4 families all coming up that, in theory, coming up that stairway, if they haven't driven there, or guests coming up there.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Somebody's got Siri on or something. First of all, I can't even read the width of the sidewalk area there, but you've got 4 families essentially coming up that stairway, walking down what looks to be a very, very narrow sidewalk. It wasn't clear to me where the fences are relative to the sidewalk, but I hope they're not on both sides of the sidewalk under any circumstances. And they then tie into this sidewalk running on the south side of the buildings, and then the sidewalks essentially disappear. So someone can't even choose to walk in from Forest Street to this development, which for many people would be a lot easier than trying to climb that stairway. So the whole lack of what I'll call planning for pedestrian movement for me is a concern. If there's a sidewalk here and I'm missing it, but I don't see a sidewalk running down along the driveway down to.
This is the trash enclosure, and then this is the curb.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't see. I mean, everybody that would want to basically walk out in that direction has no path other than to walk in the middle of the entry-exit driveway, and so. The whole issue of some continuity of movement. And if we go back to that entry sidewalk between the two-family homes, again, this is, I don't see a width on there. I guess there is some width somewhere. It's not even as wide as the stairway that brings you up there. And I don't understand the reason for what barely looks like an alleyway running that entire length. I find that difficult, and when I heard about the fences, it seemed to me there was a fence on at least one side and probably both sides, and I had some objections to the fences to begin with. So that seems like a very awkward way. And I don't even know what someone would do who is, you know, obviously it can't be used by someone in a wheelchair, that's for sure. But to have that as the only entry for 4 units of housing seems very strange to me.
So, Rick, and you can correct me. So there's an existing bluestone walkway there. And I believe what Rick is, the width shown there is the width of the existing walkway. Is that right, Rick? Can you hear me?
Rick, can you hear us?
I see, Rick. He might be muted. Or he's not muted.
No, he's not muted.
Now,
No, not you, Rick. Sorry. Rick Jarzembowski. Sorry. Yeah. No, we didn't mean you, Rick. Sorry about that. Not Rick Earhart. Rick Jarzembowski.
I think we lost him because his camera went out too.
I
So
can see his camera still.
Oh. So I'll let him get, when he comes back, he can address the walkway. I agree with you that the fence is awkward right there, Joe. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I kind of don't, and the another one you mentioned at the last meeting that's still on this plan is the one on the other side of the proposed two-family that kind of splits this whole property.
I think they're wrong. I mean, the sense of this, in my mind, is that these are homes in an open park-like environment.
Yeah, and I agree.
All the fences, it takes that all away in a sense.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I would propose this because what they add to this two family is like kind of these side yards that I don't think anyone's going to ever. They're not really functional anyways. They're long and narrow, and I don't think anyone's going to use them. What if at the back of this two-family home, well, I don't know what we're calling the back and the front, on the Chestnut side of this two-family home.
I'm going to get to that next, which is the back and which is the front. Because
we kind of have two fronts here, but what I would like is for them to have a small private yard in the back there. And so I would like, I guess the one fence here is consistent with that on the one side. So remember last time that fence on the left-hand side went all the way across the property. And so what we did now is just enclose it. I would propose that we match that on the other side of this for the other unit. And instead of having that fence go all the way from the stair, all the way across to the driveway, we just kind of mirror that and right up. Yeah, exactly. So mirror that one on the other side. So each of these people have a small private yard, but in general, we get rid of that long one that's proposed there.
Okay, so let me keep going with this basic issue of the site plan. So which is the front and which is the back? I mean, I presume, though I could be wrong, you're putting a Chestnut Street address for each of the proposed, for the new proposed building. Yet the entry is really not off of that because that's a very awkward way of getting in. And you don't want someone coming up for what I'll call the Westerly house to have to literally, if that is the front entrance, then someone coming from the Westerly house has to walk all the way down this narrow path and walk with the fences that are going to be there all the way back around and come in on the driveway side. So it becomes a very awkward entry arrangement, I guess, and it seems odd, I guess, and that's why I wanted to see it doesn't look like it's nicely landscaped or anything along that. It's sort of just a very long trek for anybody that actually walks up those stairs and wants to get to the front doors, if you will, or.
Well, yeah, it was intended that the driveway side is the main entrance for those two homes, but just because the layout of this site with the large, retaining wall along Chestnut Street, there's no, there's very little parking on Chestnut Street. If somebody's coming to this house, yeah, if they're walking, they could come up the stairs. But it's intended that they're probably going to park on this site or come up from Forest Street, which kind of speaks to your point about
which is the other point, that there's no continuity of sidewalk down to Forest Street. So
yeah, and I hadn't even thought of that. I mean, today everybody that accesses both 59 Chestnut and 157 Forest just walks up the driveway to that, kind of where that Bilco door is. And the driveway is much narrower than what's proposed here. We're proposing to widen it to 18 feet. That seems to work well. If you felt that the sidewalk really needs to extend all the way to Forest Street, it's pretty tight there, but I think we could probably make it work.
I guess my reaction is I think you have to relocate the trash enclosure, frankly, and allow that zone to then become a sidewalk that allows people to get down to Forest. I think it's the decent thing to do for people, for kids who are coming home from school, or for anybody. It's a more decent thing to do. And then there's the question of, if you're going to maintain that historic path up the stairway, I think there needs to be a real landscape plan around the path to separate it from the adjacent property. And from my perspective, I think the responsibility for that landscaping ought to belong to what I will call the developer of these joint properties, and should be maintained in some way like that. I know we have separate trash areas for all, essentially, for each of the homes, which I guess is that TEs. Those are the trash enclosure areas. How are those enclosed? So I understand what you're actually putting there.
We could flip to the detail of that.
It's a
fence here.
Graham, does that meet our criteria for trash enclosures? I just don't know what the rules are. I just honestly don't know immediately.
Yeah, we're
what
required to
the
have.
rules are.
Yeah, I mean, for the two family houses don't have to provide the same level of trash enclosure as
Right.
the four family. Four family requirement is wood or masonry walls on all four sides and a roof, and then a concrete base. So I think that the design presented here would be sufficient.
Meets the requirements. So the next question is, then on every day trash is collected, each of these owners pulls, and that's, each of these owners pulls the trash can out of there. And I hope they're small eaters, because there's only one garbage can and one recycling can that fits there. And then they have to roll it down, presumably, to Forest Street, which again reinforces the need for a sidewalk and a clear path for people to walk on if they're going to pull the trash out of those containers, take them down the street and line them all up on Forest Street, and then eventually come to I guess they line up somewhere along the sidewalk on Forest Street, and eventually they come back and pick them up later in the day, the way we all do in private homes. But I definitely think there needs to be a very clear, identifiable, safe path for people to be walking, as well as for them to be bringing their trash out and everything else. So whatever that is, that would appear to at least require the relocation of the trash enclosure. And then I thought I saw a tree right there as well, but am I missing that near the corner of the fourth story? It appears on some of the documents. Well, it's not appearing there, but it appears on the grading plan, there seems to be.
Yeah, there is a tree there. There's a tree there that's kind of up under the eaves that we would have to, that's going to go away if we expanded the driveway anyways. So yeah, I think that the sidewalk idea is totally doable. Easy enough to move the trash enclosure over next to the Bilco door, so that's not in your way, and put a section of sidewalk. It's going to be quite a steep sidewalk. You can see the grading on this plan right here. It'll be quite steep getting down there from the, but it is what it is. I mean, people walk up the driveway and that's the same, steepness.
And there's no way of modulating it by pulling it by beginning the slope down. Well, let's see. What's the elevation? It begins sloping at 283, and what's the curb elevation? It's not that steep. I'm looking at it. I mean, it's certainly, the driveway is not that steep.
Well, it looks like it's already proposed to be cut back to make that wider driveway. So I think we took some of that out. But yeah, I'm not opposed to that, Joe.
I'm actually looking at the topography that you're showing, and it doesn't appear to me to be that steep, actually. You've got about 20 feet per, 1 foot per 20 feet, it looks like, except for, yeah, you've got about 1 foot and 20 there, which is not all that steep, actually.
The only thing that's odd, and it's hard to describe, but I think Graham probably has a picture, but if you see what on the sheet we're looking at right now,
yeah,
there's a second floor addition of this house that actually sticks out larger than the first floor footprint. It's dotted.
I see the dotted lines. Yeah.
Right. So those two little squares are columns, which would be right in the middle of your sidewalk that you're proposing there.
Well, if they, you know what? If they can walk under it, at least they still have a safe path to take that's not in the driveway. Can they walk through that zone?
Yeah, you can walk through there. Graham, you had a picture in your original report. I don't know if that's easy to pull up.
I'm pulling that up right now.
Thanks, Graham.
Going live now.
Yeah, so you can walk right under that. The side of the driveway is proposed to be wider, so the driveway goes pretty much to the pole almost. And then you'd kind of be walking under this overhang, which that works.
I don't. The answer is, I guess, the simplest answer I could get is we will provide for a pedestrian path that allows people to exit the site through onto Forest Street on a pedestrian path separate from the driveway. And if we can get that as a condition, that would be very helpful.
Okay, that's fair.
Joe.
Yes, Michael.
So we're going through the suburban report. There's some 24 items. We talked about granting waivers potentially for items 18 and 19. There's all kinds of, unclear discussions about fencing adjacent to the railroad, relocate this fence. There's talk about a landscape plan. There's talking about sidewalks. There's talking about relocating trash enclosures. Is it your intention to, if the board's inclined to grant an approval subject to a whole lot of conditions? Because I just want to make sure someone's able to articulate those at some point.
As long as we cannot, the answer is as long as we can articulate the conditions we're talking about, I don't have a problem, subject to final review by Graham and the other people at the planning department that they fulfilled all the conditions before they can go forward. And if that doesn't work, then I'd have to bring them back, but I'd hate to have to do that if we can avoid it.
Okay, I just want, somebody's got to be prepared to articulate those conditions because it's not been clear to follow or easy to follow so far.
Well, I think we can take them. We've had a number of conditions. One is to bring the lighting levels down.
Okay, well, that's in the suburban report, and they indicated that they were going to comply with that. So we don't need to make that an additional condition.
Okay, so one of the conditions is they comply with the suburban report.
Yes, except for 18 and 19.
Except for 18 and 19, where we're granting a waiver, and the rest, of the conditions have to do with walkways and fencing primarily.
Yeah, so I have 3 written down here. If we want to start with those and see if you agree with them, and then see if there's any you want to add. You know, sidewalk access to Forest Street, right? That's what we just talked about, that there should be sidewalk from Forest Street to access the property. Remove the fence between the proposed 2-family and 59 Chestnut.
Okay, go slow.
Okay. So removing the fence between 59 Chestnut and the proposed 2-family. If you could go over there.
Okay.
Yeah. Relocate trash enclosure 1-4.
Relocate it where?
I mean, really, it just needs to move because that's where the sidewalk that we're talking about is planning to go. So I think we were talking about just moving it over to
Existing air conditioned units between the Bilko door and the air conditioned units.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, we kind of jumped around, but the sidewalk access to Forest and the relocating trash enclosure 1 through 4 to next to the Bilko, those kind of go together for that entrance. Then moving over to the other entrance, we talked about removing that fence.
Yeah, but we got to identify it.
Removing the existing fence adjacent to the entry walkway.
But it's a proposed fence.
And providing a proposed fence similar to that which is next to the westerly unit, which is what Graham is just drawing in. So he certainly understands if he's doing the annotation.
Okay, so
I still have a bunch of others, so let's keep going.
let's stay with that because it's not clear to me. So it was remove the proposed fence adjacent to, and I couldn't hear the rest.
Adjacent to that big entry path, there's a fence that actually runs all the way from Chestnut Street all the way up to the sidewalk near the front of the houses. That fence would not exist.
Okay, and then also we're providing a new fence similar to, and something was said.
Similar to the
Unit 5
that exists next to the westerly unit. So similar to what's on Unit 5 would be on Unit 6 to provide a relatively small contained rear yard for each of these 2 elements of these townhouse structures.
Okay, so we're providing a new fence similar to what's proposed for Unit 5 for Unit 6.
Yes.
And then, do we have Rick back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. Rick, there was a question about this entrance walkway from the top of these stairs. Now, I had intended, and I just want to make sure that's what you're showing, is that we maintained the bluestone walkway that's there. Is that what's shown?
Yes.
And then there's also a privet hedge along that existing walk, which it's been a side project of mine since we moved in, trying to, get this privet hedge into kind of the classic privet pyramid shape. I think you can probably show that on the landscaping plan. So, Joe, that's what I had proposed. Okay. A privet hedge and a bluestone walkway. That's what's there now. And it's a part of the property I like. If you think that that's inappropriate or there's a better way to enter there, I'm open to hear options.
The answer is I'm satisfied with that because I don't think there are going to be a lot of people walking that path, frankly. So it's a nice way to separate 2 buildings and provide access for those who choose to go up that stairway.
And Kevin, is this the privet hedge that you can see here in this photo?
Yeah, I hacked it up in March because it was super overgrown, but it's now filled in pretty nice. I am told it's going to take me a couple of years, but I'm going to get that into like the nice classic privet shape.
So, Joe, does that eliminate the condition about the fence adjacent to 6 that we're talking about?
No.
No, there's still not going to be any fence. There's just going to be the privet hedge.
Right. And the bluestone walk.
This clarifies the sidewalk.
No, I'm sorry, Michael, just to clarify, that doesn't eliminate the fence on the Chestnut Street side of Unit 6 that matches the one by Unit 5. That's a separate privacy fence for a rear yard, which would go in. And which is still proposed to go in. And I think we also need a condition relative to the parking lot curbing being kept out of the right of way.
That was highlighted.
That's in the engineer's report.
Yeah, but it doesn't say anything. The engineer's report just comments on it. But I thought we had an understanding that it would be adjusted so that no waiver was required, that it would stay within the property.
Yeah, I guess the report says we should get an easement, and we decided, I guess we're not really complying with that because we're deciding we're going to change it so we don't need an easement.
Okay, so let's look at what item that is. Was that 9?
Item 8.
8?
8, yeah.
Okay, so with respect to item 8, the parking lot will be.
The curbing will be reconfigured to avoid encroachment on the right of way.
And lastly, we also need to make, and I'd like some input from other people on this, the whole issue of whether or not that 42-inch oak can be saved. Because I don't have a problem with the configuration of the retaining wall. And I'd love to try to save it if that can be done.
And Joe, you're talking, that came up, I think, with respect to comment 9 in the report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a 42.
Comment 9 was not a comment. Comment 9 said it was just in conflict with what's there. It didn't resolve it one way or another. And I think we need to have a condition that resolves it.
And you're proposing that the applicant makes his best efforts to save that 42-inch tree.
Yes, and to perhaps, if necessary, speak with the township tree expert or whatever to discuss what might be done. And
yeah, we were gonna have Paul Anderson comment on that.
And also, just within the context of that, there are pavements that are pervious. And certainly it could be done within the tree line of that area without really affecting or disturbing the parking area if there was a pervious zone within the outline of the foliage.
Yeah,
on that tree to help preserve it.
It's not the impervious that's an issue. I mean, like street trees survive just fine with impervious coverage over them all the time. It's about changing the grade on top of it. So that's one thing you never do is raise your grade around the base of these trees because it just ends up killing them, and especially with.
Well, that's why you have the retaining wall so that you don't have to raise the base.
I know, but the retaining wall's right near the tree. The root zone of that tree is going to be the exact same, about the same size as the canopy of the tree. So you're looking at a much bigger area of root zone there than that retaining wall is holding back.
Which is why I was talking about the pervious pavement to allow for the water to go through. That's why I raised the question.
Yeah, I don't think it's a water issue getting to the tree. I have a professional degree in landscape architecture. It's just like one of the things they tell you not to do. You don't raise the grade around existing trees because it just kills them every time. We went through it with the hotel. We had those beautiful magnolias over at the George Hotel, but that parking lot was raised around it, and it immediately killed that magnolia just because the grade had to be raised to make that parking lot work.
All right, then let's do something to replace that tree as part of the approval process.
Sure.
All right, so let's get a recommendation for a replacement tree that can be reset in that area if you're actually going to take that one down. And again, I haven't heard anything from any board members with regard to the conversation. So in the end, we need to make sure that everybody else is all right with this. And I think those are the basic issues that we've talked about on the site plan. We have not talked about anything else. Is that
question Regarding the bluestone walkway, did we say that it needed to be the width of the staircase, or is it how
Well, I
much
don't-
thinner is?
If you've got the existing hedge there, which we don't want to mess up, and I do view it as a secondary path, frankly. I can leave it, if that's an existing, but I'll use the term historic bluestone pathway, then let it be. I just don't see the width on it, so. What's that other fence we're looking at to the right of the existing building?
So the idea is that there's access. There's 2 units in that existing home there, and that each of them would have a small private kind of side yard there that's tucked away from the rest of the property.
I guess I sort of get it, but most people live in 2-family homes don't have individual yards, one for me and one for you, so.
Yeah, the entrances to this building are kind of strange. Like this goes back to which side is the front, in that the upstairs unit is accessed from the back, proposed deck, and the downstairs unit is accessed from the existing front porch. So it's really kind of immediately adjacent to those 2 entrances. You could kind of really have a nice private yard, which, it's amenity. Like you said, most 2-family homes don't have it. Most apartments don't have it, but that would be an amenity for this space, that they would have kind of a small private yard. We try to give everybody, at least a small area that's private and is just theirs,
I guess that's immaterial. And and there's one other thing we talked about, which was a fence that protects this property from the railway tracks or the potential for kids or others getting in there. And I'm not sure where that fence would have to be, whether it could be on the property line. I guess it can be on the property line. And I thought that was something that you thought was probably a good idea as well.
Yeah, Mr. Caulfield mentioned it, and we said that would be a good idea.
So that should be
What kind
another.
of fence are we talking about? Are we talking about a 4-foot high fence, a 5-foot high fence? Graham, what's the maximum that's permitted?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So in this zone, the maximum permitted fence height in this area along this red line that I'm drawing on the screen now would be 4.5 feet. If the board wanted to grant relief for a taller fence, they would need to.
I think that's sufficient. The real intent is that someone just doesn't sort of end up there. And if someone wants to climb a fence, whether it's 4 foot or 5.5 foot, they'll get over a fence. So it's more of a safety.
Not really a privacy concern. So.
And what is the fencing? Because I guess I didn't see the details on the fencing. Do we have details of the fencing that's now proposed in all these various places?
Rick, that'd be for you. I believe it's a board-on-board fence, but I don't know if it's detailed.
It's on the first sheet. Or should be.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So the fence adjacent to the railroad property would also be board on board? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
I think the board-on-board solid fence is probably a good thing. Certainly on that edge. I don't love it in the other places they're going to exist, but that's a privacy thing, and I don't have a big problem with it. I think that covers all the things we talked about, Michael.
Okay, Mr. Costello, I don't know if there's any other board questions.
I haven't heard any. Are the other board members still with us? Graham, can you call on each one and make sure nobody has a question?
Sure. Mr. Caulfield, do you have any questions?
Nope, I think Mr. Fleischer's handled it all. Thank you.
Mr. Simon, do you have any further questions?
No further questions.
Church, do you have any further questions?
I'm not clear as to what's the front entrance of these 2 buildings. Is it Chestnut Street or is it Forest Avenue?
Which building? The proposed or the existing?
The proposed two-family, 5 and 6. What are what are the front entrances?
Yeah, the main entrances are circled there by Graham. They're off the driveway side.
So that would be an address for Forest Avenue.
I mean, I don't actually assign addresses. When you do a new property like this, you reach out to the township engineer and they give you an address.
Okay, but that's
the house.
But that would be where the residents would enter the front part of their house. Am I correct?
Yes, where those red circles are.
Okay.
Unit 8 and 9, which is 59 Chestnut, unit 1 and 2. But people, historically have always parked behind 157 Forest to access unit 8 and 9. So I don't know what the township would assign. I'm indifferent to how it's addressed.
Typically, in the towns that I deal with, actually the tax assessor is the one who assigns block lots and addresses in connection with a project such as this.
That's not how it's worked in Montclair. It used to always be Kim Kraft, but I just did one the other day, and it was, I believe it's your new engineer in Suburban Engineering that assigned
Okay,
it.
but that's not, I don't think we need to get involved in that. I mean, that's something that down the road, either the township engineer, the township tax assessor, or whoever, or a combination of the two, someone's going to make that call. So
let me ask one question about that whole thing. What occurs at the bottom of those stairs coming up from Chestnut? Is there a gate, a fence?
No.
Is everybody free to just walk up there and go in? I'm just trying to find out.
Yeah, today, I mean, it's just open. I've had one person that thought it was a public right of way and walked through, and I just, stopped them and talked, and they said, it was during COVID, they said, the sidewalk was busy, and so we walked up to avoid people. I'm sorry, but yeah, there's a good picture of it. But no, there's no gate or anything on that side at this time.
Well, I mean, do you want to mark it as private property or anything, or is that not within our?
I've never had an issue with it. I could always mark it if it becomes more of an issue, but I've never had a problem with people kind of using that weren't supposed to.
And then this is a great photo because I asked before about repairs to this retaining wall.
Yes, you did.
And it looks like a mess here. That doesn't mean it's not structurally stable, but it looks like a mess. So I was wondering what, if anything, you plan to do for that, what I'll call the entire length of that wall.
Yeah, so, we brought out a structural guy. Structurally, it seems to be in great shape. It does have some aesthetic issues. That kind of top detail is crumbling in a couple spots. So we would be fine with that as a condition of approval that we, I don't know how you would word that, but that we make necessary repairs. It also just generally needs a good cleaning.
That's what I'm saying. It ought to be cleaned and it ought to be repaired and necessary.
Cleaned and repaired, sure.
Yes.
And just for the record, that's along Chestnut Street, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And that little door we're seeing all the way on the left, what is that?
You're seeing just the edge of the garage door. There's a single car garage that's cut into the hill there.
So we're just seeing the edge of it. Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a full-size garage door. You just can't see it all because of the shape there.
Okay. Thank you. I've walked past there. I've driven past there a million times.
Are the garbage cans on there? Are those from the people that live in that building? Do they bring the garbage cans down that way? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so
garbage cans down there.
Yeah, so Joe mentioned each individual tenant taking their garbage out. I wish that I could rely on my tenants like that. So at this time, my wife and I take the garbage out twice a week for all the tenants. But yes, 59 Chestnut has traditionally taken them down the stairs and put them there, and 157 Forest takes them the other way and puts them in front of that building.
They must be strong people then. Okay, thanks.
Or they don't eat much.
So,
I mean, that was part of my issue of whether or not, as a development, and I'll call it a development, whether we shouldn't have a more uniform or unified trash collection plan than everybody takes their own garbage cans out to the street. So,
Well, that's my job. I'm the unified plan.
you're the unified plan.
Yeah.
So, and you're planning on taking them where, Mr. Costello?
Well, I think how it would work is, 59 Chestnut and probably what do we call that? The Eastern House. Unit 6 would still go down to Chestnut Street, and the 4-family in Unit 5 would go down to Forest Street.
Okay.
I'm guessing that's how we do it.
And you will be responsible for that.
Yeah.
For both taking it down, not necessarily physically doing it yourself, but taking it down and having them retrieved.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I could try to, put it in a lease that people have to, but it's a hassle, and people don't bring them in. Then you get a ticket, and the ticket comes to the owner, not to the tenant.
That's why I liked it all in one place, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Okay.
Okay, so just finalizing with questions of members of the board. Ms. Gilmer, do you have any questions for the applicant, Mr. Rosenbowski?
I do not.
And Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
None at the moment.
Okay, ready for the next witness, I presume.
Wish to call another witness?
Okay,
Mr. Anderson, the civil engineer, is available. I don't know if we want to discuss. The only thing that really came up, I think, that might be up in the air is that little retaining wall, and if it's necessary there. Would you like him to come and discuss that?
Only if you think it's needed.
I mean, it seemed like we didn't get any input from the other board members, but it seems like it would be okay with the board if we replaced that tree. We could adjust the grading to make that work without a retaining wall, and then replace that tree with a species acceptable to the township arborist.
Yes, that's what I thought we agreed on.
Yes. Okay.
So if that's the case, I don't need to call Mr. Anderson.
So, Mr. Chairman, if that's the case, then I just want to make sure we do open it up to the public for questions or comments.
We should do that now.
Or deliberations.
We should do that now. Are any members of the public want to either ask questions or comment on this application?
Okay, so all members of the public, I'm going to unmute your lines. If you have any questions or comments on this application, now is the time to speak. Okay.
At least the chuckle.
Yeah, that's worth it.
Right. Not hearing any questions, Mr. Chairman, so I'm going to close the public comment this time. Last call. Okay.
Okay,
Public comment is now closed.
Let's begin, and whoever's normal, who's ever wants to go first, and then we can just go through each member of the board should. Well, I shouldn't say that. Are we ready for any closing statements by the applicant?
Mr. Costello, do you want to say anything in closing? You're not obligated to do so.
No, I think we've covered it. Thank you, board, for your consideration.
All right, let's call each member of the board and see if they have what they'd like to discuss and comment on.
Mr. Fleischer, if I could, just so the board's aware, because we previously granted various use variances and bulk variances, you're now part of the site plan application and a bifurcated application. And this is similar to a site plan application that you would review. The only difference is that the negative criteria that was present when we reviewed the variance portion of this application is also present for this. So while you're reviewing the site plan, you want to make sure that if you are going to approve it, that you are comfortable that both prongs of the negative criteria are met. First, that there's not substantial detriment to the public good. That's the impact on area properties. and that it will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And I will also say that if there's a motion to approve it, it would incorporate all those conditions that we painstakingly went through.
Why don't we start with Mr. Caulfield?
Okay. You know, I felt like we've discussed this project. First, it came with 4 different houses. Now it's down to the two new proposed things. I'm in favor. Who's doing the dishes? That's all I want to know. Someone doing dishes?
I am, and I'm going to mute. I apologize.
That's okay. Not a problem. Yeah, I'm in favor of this application. I don't think the negative that council talked about is going to be negative in such a way that's going to be detriment to the town of Montclair. Thank you.
Graham, you want to?
Sorry, yeah, I can continue. Yeah. Ms. Gilmer?
Yes, I also think that this will be a great improvement to that corner. I want to stress the importance of the modifications with the light for parking, the sidewalk that extends down to Forest, and should the oak tree roots be disturbed and resulting in a loss of the tree, that another tree be replanted with New Jersey specimen. Thank you.
Mr. Simon?
I'm in favor of the application. I think the applicant went through significant lengths to meet our conditions and make adjustments to the plan. So I'm in favor.
Mr. Church?
Who?
You're on, Mr. Church. We
Oh,
can hear you.
okay. I would be in favor of the plan, although it's going a long way to approval. Because they did meet a lot of our conditions, and they're going to meet with the conditions that we've imposed tonight on the site plan. I would be in favor of the application only because there doesn't seem to be anything else that they could do to make it even better. So I'd vote for this.
Mr. Moore?
I'm in favor of the application. I don't see it as a detriment to the area or providing any hardship to the neighbors. I think that it'll be a great enhancement on the lot that it's currently on. And I think as long as we follow the restrictions that were stated by the vice chair and my other colleagues mentioned are used, I think that it'll be a great use for this site.
And Mr. Fleischer?
I'm obviously also in favor of this. I think the applicant has worked very hard with us to try to make the best possible solution here. I think it was an enormous step forward when we eliminated one of the originally proposed 2 new structures, and that allowed for enough air in the site plan to allow other things to occur. So I'm in favor of the application with the conditions that have been referenced by Mr. Sullivan. And within that context, I think the approval of this will not be detrimental to the master plan or to the zone plan. And I think the application could be approved under those conditions.
In addition to the conditions that I previously articulated, we should carry forth conditions 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 from our January 20, 2021 resolution.
So done.
All right, we need a motion for approval on this.
Motion to approve based on the conditions stated in this meeting and the ones carried forth from the January meeting.
Can we get a second, please?
Second.
Can we, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good luck, Mr. Costello.
I appreciate it, board. Thank you for all your time and working with me on this. Look forward to getting this project going.
We'll take a 5-minute break to allow for Mr. Harrison to come back, and then we'll be ready to go.
But you should take a break anyway, but I am here.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll wrap up with the remaining elements of tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Back. I'm back.
Okay. Yes, hi, Jay. We see you.
Hi, okay. We are.
Here.
Okay. The TV set.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, the next application is that of Laura Hornik for property at 117 Essex Avenue. This is an application for a variance to construct a front porch addition to the existing dwelling. Property is located in the R11 family zone. Property is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 2 in Block 3412. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B1 to permit a front yard setback for interior lots of less than the average front yard setback of the existing buildings. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Is
just
it Ms. Hornik or Ms. Horkin?
Hornik.
Okay, Ms. Hornik, are you going to testify or are you going to turn it over to Mr. Guadagnoli?
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Guadagnoli.
Okay, Mr. Guadagnoli, would you raise your right hand?
Yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
Okay, you want to explain what you're proposing to do?
Yes, Ms. Hornik and her husband wanted to construct a front porch across the front of their home. Currently, as you can see in the picture, the photograph on the plan I prepared, in the lower left, you can see that there is an existing portico covering over the front door. That projects about 7 feet out from the house. And around the house, there is a kind of a mid-level skirt or little piece of roof that goes around. What's being proposed is a standard front porch that would project 8 feet from the house and be supported on 4 square columns and have a gently sloping hip roof on it. The problem here, the reason we're here is that the average setback on that side of the street at that particular location is 46.17 feet, and the new porch would exceed that by just over 4 feet. I want to point out in the lower right side of my drawing, there's a front yard setback calculation chart, which gives the address of the adjoining houses and their distances from their front property line. And what's causing all this is house number 121, whose setback is extraordinary on that block. It's 57 feet back. So that's kind of skewing the average. Or else this house, the Hornik residence, is pretty much in keeping with what's on the block already. So the relief we're seeking is that is for a 4.2 foot front yard setback variance to allow the construction of this front porch. That's it in a nutshell.
Mr. Guadagnoli, just for your benefit, the board is now looking at the submitted plans on the screen. But just to advise, your office did submit an exhibit for this evening's proceeding. So I don't know if you wanted to
Yes.
reference the HPC meeting and then, talk to the
Yeah.
exhibit. But I do have that ready to show on the screen when you're ready.
Okay, yes, the originally submitted drawings are what you see on the screen. They're not that much different from the revised ones. The Historic Preservation Committee had some recommendations, which we acted upon, and we did what they had suggested.
So we'll need to mark this received exhibit as Exhibit A1, revised plan set pursuant to HPC comments, I guess.
Right. The HPC pointed out that they would like a reference to the original portico, so we added that peak that you see over the front door. If you compare the old to the revised, the original drawing does not have a peak over the center. We did that in order to match the other houses on the block, which all have that peaked portico in front of them. So in addition, they recommended brick corner piers, which we did, and they recommended pilasters or half columns affixed to the front wall of the house directly behind the front ones, which you can see in the floor plan on the plan view. There's where is it? There it is. On the upper left, you can see it's called a half pilaster. Basically, it's one of the columns cut in half and applied to the house in order to complete the look of the porch. And finally, we lowered the pitch of the new porch roof, so that it becomes as invisible, if you will, as possible. We want as much as possible emphasize that front peaked portico in order to make it appear and work like all the others on the block. Originally I just had it flat across, but they really wanted that peak, so we put it in. And I think that was really the extent of the recommendations from the HPC.
Mr. Granoli, can I ask you a question? John Coffey. On the plans that you submit to me, I have the picture of the house, but it doesn't have the giant tree there. It seems like I might have the wrong picture on mine. Is that correct? I'm a little confused on that. I no tree here whatsoever.
Yeah, I can assist with that clarity. If the applicant submitted a photo of the house next door on the original.
Okay. How far is that tree from maybe the proposed, like what's the landscape going to look like from that proposed?
Well, yeah, I mean, the lower landscaping obviously will be removed and new landscaping will be put forward of the new porch. I honestly don't know if that tree has to go or not. Honestly, don't. I'm not sure. I think it probably will have to go, but something else would have to be planted in its place. But it kind of has overgrown the house. If you see that, it pretty much over. It touches the house. I mean, so. But whatever landscaping happens will happen forward of the porch.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Fleischer, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
Did you ask for Miss Gilmore, or did you say Mr. Moore?
Mr. Moore.
Oh, no questions at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Simon, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
Yeah, one question. I'm assuming that if this application is approved, that all of the vegetation that's there now, that has to be removed will be reestablished in front of the new deck?
I would assume so. However, that might be a question for the owners who are present.
What?
Yes, I intended to do that, but I mean,
Okay.
they're the ones that would ultimately do it. So,
Okay, so that if the tree gets in the way, that tree would be replaced.
yes, yes.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Caulfield, do you have any further questions?
No, Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Gilmore, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. I just want to follow up on the tree. I mean, it's a deciduous tree, and, you know, I was actually surprised looking at it without its leaves when I drove by or stopped in front of it, and versus what it looks like here, where it looks like it's a very different picture. I'm not sure whether it does or doesn't have to be removed, but I think the question, and we may have to swear in Ms. Hornik, is whether they'll agree to put landscaping in front of the porch. So it keeps the current character of the house.
Character of the block.
Yeah, and the other houses as you go up and down Essex Avenue.
I'm ready to
Ms.
answer.
Hornik, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
Laura Hornik, 117 Essex Ave.
Thank you.
So that tree, unfortunately, has gotten a disease and is almost dead. We had a tree company come in and assess our trees very recently, and we were informed that it really wasn't savable. So that's why when you drove by, it was looking quite sickly, because it is sickly. So unfortunately, that tree is destined to be removed, and with or without the porch. But we absolutely will be doing re-landscaping in front of the porch once we build it.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members of the board? Are there any members of the audience? You're going to be unmuted shortly. If you have any questions, if you have any testimony, statements, any comments whatsoever, this is going to be your chance to speak. So you'll be unmuted shortly.
Mr. Chair, we don't have any members of the public currently in attendance.
Okay, we still have to go through it, same as when we're meeting in person and the room's empty, just in case someone's hiding. Okay, and okay. Anything further either of you wish to add before we discuss and vote on the application?
No, nothing from me, thanks.
Okay, I don't know where you did, so I'm just going to start with Mr. Moore.
I'm in favor of the application. I think that it will make a nice addition to your home and the street in which it resides.
Mr. Simon?
I'm in favor of the condition that all greenery is replaced.
Okay, Mr. Church?
And I'm in favor of the application, but I believe that I would concur that foliage should be put back in front just to maintain the character of Essex Avenue.
Mr. Caulfield?
I'm in favor of the project.
Ms. Gilmer?
I'm also in favor.
Mr. Fleischer?
Mr. Fleischer, you're muted. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I want to be sure we don't require the applicant or imply that the applicant has to put back the amount of vegetation that's there, but that it should be properly planted for a porch that people may sit on and want to look out at the street. So there's some of the some of the existing planting has a lot of mass, and I know we have a similar porch and we love to sit there, but when the bushes get too high in front of where we're sitting, it's no great joy. So I think the intent is to properly landscape the area in front of the porch so that the porch can be enjoyed by the applicant, and at the same time provide something that is consistent with the vegetation on so many of the other houses along Essex Avenue. But with that stated, I'm totally in favor of the project. I think it's a very good solution. And I must admit, I think the historical preservation people actually came up with an idea that I think really works well. So I'm happy that change was made as well. Thank you.
Okay. I'm also in favor of the application. I think the addition is consistent with the neighborhood, so it will not result in a substantial impairment to the zone plan. I think that there should be 3 conditions. 1, that it be done consistent with the revised plans that we saw tonight versus the original plans. 2, that they they have appropriate landscaping, and I will leave it entirely up to them, but there should be landscaping on either side of the front walk as to size, height, type, just so long as there is something on each side. And the 3rd is that they return to the Historic Preservation Commission as they requested in their memo. Any further discussion? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the application with the provisos spoke to by the chairman.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, build your porch.
Thank
Thank you
so
very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
And with the motion to adjourn, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. There you go.